See, that's not good, because what I was going to say is, when I was a graduate student at Harvard, and that was a time that there were not a lot of women in the field, right? And only 10% of of everybody in the building was a woman. And we basically banded together, because we had that commonality and we all wanted to share our experiences. Yeah. And I think that was ultimately good in promoting camaraderie, promoting success. And then, we all went on to our own careers and continued to mentor all of the women who were younger than me. Yeah. I think that's how it has to be. That, in your analogy, if the first redbird doesn't see a connection with the second one, then we're in trouble. Because then those poor redbirds are going to be isolated forever.
Welcome to the Navigating Nano podcast, where we explore the multidisciplinary world of nanotechnology with distinguished professors and researchers. Join us as we sit down and talk about the cutting-edge research, career paths, and expert opinions on the expanding world of technology. This week, Dr. Donna Chen of the University of South Carolina joins us, the Materials Research Society at the Joint School of Nanoscience and Nanotechnology, to talk about being a woman in STEM, how to build camaraderie as a woman in STEM, and not losing your passion for being in a lab and scientific discovery in academia. Please join us this week as we navigate Nano.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a while since we had a Navigating Nano episode, and today we are privileged to have Dr. Donna Chen, a professor at the University of South Carolina. Welcome to Navigating Nano, and we are going to have a very open conversation about science and, of course, about navigating the science that you do, but more into diving into your career and how your career journey can relate to our experiences. So I'm very pleased to know that you have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a PhD from Harvard University. Everyone wants to go to Harvard. While growing up, I wanted to go to Yale, but Harvard was my second. But I'm here in one of the best schools in the United States. And Dr. Donna has done a postdoc, and she has been a faculty member at the University of South Carolina since 1999. 23 years, that's a very long time. 23 years of good stories, I hope. Are they?
I hope so.
I hope so too. But listening to the conversation today, you're very eloquent. You know how to do science communication. Despite of how difficult the topic was, personally, I could understand it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes, so that's what I really enjoyed about your talk today, and the fact that you're very passionate about what you're doing. It comes out so naturally. Some of us do struggle to communicate science, but you did it so authentically.
That's really good. I'm glad you enjoyed that.
Yes, and you're working with this, heterogeneous catalysis.
Yeah.
It's a multi-billion industry, as I was reading.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, the translation of your work into industry. But before we get there, could you tell us how has been your journey, your academic journey, your research journey for the past over 23 years?
Yeah, so I would say that when I was growing up, my life was always dominated by academia, because both of my parents are professors, not in science. Mm-hmm. So my father in mathematics and my mother in psychology, but my life has always kind of been tied to the academic cycle. Mm-hmm. And, my parents would teach during the regular school year, and they would reserve the summers for research. And my sister and I were always somehow involved in their research projects.
Yeah.
In the beginning, we would serve as subjects. Mm-hmm. As we got older, we would help type the papers. We'd help analyze the data, and so it was really fun. My passion I discovered was chemistry. Although I didn't really come onto that until my senior year of high school. when I took AP chemistry. And I had a wonderful teacher. His name was John Francis, and he just inspired me.
Wow.
And I thought chemistry was the greatest thing in the world. I spent all my time thinking about chemistry, reading about chemistry. You could always find me in the library with a chemistry book. And my friends would say, why are you reading that? Nobody reads the book. And I'm like, it's so fascinating. I wanted to read every part of it, the little asides. And so, I was really fortunate that I found my calling.
Yeah.
There.
That was you found your calling so early. Some of us had to take decades to be like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I was passionate about biology. I was always interested in the human body. If anything, I wanted to be a doctor. I really wanted to understand how the body works. And I studied immunology, and that has been a good journey so far because now I understand how diseases do work.
Yes.
And in as much as we're in two parallels, it's chemistry, I'm in immunology, doing nanoengineering in synthetic biology, but it's all in the line of research. And the complexity of research, you know very well because you've been there for a very long time. And I, as a PhD student, my biggest challenge has always been, how do I design a protocol that works?
Right.
And today, as you're trying to explain, you are explaining every aspect of the work that you have done so simplistically, and you made it so easy, as I said. But in the early stages or in the early phases of your research, you understood what chemistry was. How did you come to the conclusion that you wanted to study catalysis?
Yes. Okay. So, so then I went to study in college, and I went to the Rochester Institute of Technology. That's where my mother was a professor, so it made a lot of sense for me to go there. We had, tuition free. I lived at home, and but the thing that was so nice about that program is they had what was called cooperative education, and so RIT was actually, at that time a small school. They had a small master's program. It was mostly a bachelor's program, and the classes were, very small, maybe, maximum 10 students. And so, you really had a relationship with the professor, which is extremely nice. But then, if you go to the small school, then sometimes the drawback is they don't have all the kind of, instrumentation that a big university would have. But at RIT, everybody spent, about half their bachelor's career doing research in industry and paid research too.
Exactly.
Right? And so I got a chance to work at Eastman Kodak. And at that time in Rochester, that was, the biggest industry around. And they had a fantastic research program. And I had a wonderful mentor, David Weiss. And I was just, so fortunate that I would get, I got from RIT, I got the individual attention from the professors, and from Eastman Kodak, I got like real training in how to do research and the use of every kind of instrumental facility that you might want.
You were a lucky.
Very lucky.
Oh.
So, in the end, I was interested in all areas of chemistry. I have to say my background in bio is not so strong. But I did even take some courses in biochemistry, but I loved all aspects of chemistry. I initially actually started my research in organic chemistry because, that's one of the courses that you take first. I had a great relationship with that professor. I got a fellowship to do research with him. And it was a lot of fun, but, in the end, I think what I discovered is that what I loved most was sort of understanding why things were the way that they were.
Exactly.
And in organic chemistry, you also, if you're going to be really good at organic chemistry, you need to have great hands, I think. And I didn't have hands that were as great as some other people, let's just say. And so then, but physical chemistry was wonderful because that's when you're, really looking at why things are the way that they are, how things behave. And that's what, that's what I wanted to do. But I was also very interested in inorganic chemistry. And so when I went to Harvard, I was basically lucky enough to be able to put those two things together. So the field of surface science and these sort of, atomic and molecular understanding of reactions that occur on surfaces.
Yeah.
It has a lot of physical chemistry in it, but it's also really, has its basis in inorganic chemistry as well.
Yeah.
And so that's really how I came into that field.
Wow. But overall, what I can hear is you knew your journey way earlier before you got into,
I don't know whether, it wasn't early because, it was my senior year of high school and I was still applying to college as a computer science major.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
And because my parents were like, well, that's, really good field to be in. You're definitely going to get a good job there. And I liked computer science. I programmed, but I have to say that I liked every subject.
Yeah.
I joke frankly. But then when I got to chemistry, that was my passion. And I'm like, I've got to go into that area. And then things, after that, things just, kind of unfolded.
Yeah.
As I started to do research, right? I didn't know that I wanted to do, surface science from the beginning. I thought I wanted to do synthetic organic chemistry. I was lucky enough to be able to, to do research in all different kinds of fields. And also at Eastman Kodak, we were working on a kind of project that we were investigating new photoconductors for copier films.
Yeah.
And, the way that my advisor had structured this project is I had the chance to go synthesize the molecules, then I made the films, then I did the photophysics on the films, I did the photochemistry on the films and the molecules. And so I really got to see all the chemistries that go into a particular project. And that's, kind of where I, understood which part of chemistry that I was the most interested in.
Now, it's so interesting that you got that exposure, hands-on skills in the early phases of your life, but you chose academia.
Yes.
Why didn't you go into industry?
Yes. Okay, so when I graduated with my PhD, I actually had, a lot of possibilities. I had an offer for a permanent job at Eastman Kodak. And I also had a postdoc at S.T.E.M International Laboratories, which is where I went. And I had an opportunity to do some, research at UC Berkeley also. And, all of them were such great opportunities. But I thought that, I interviewed at Eastman Kodak, and, what I saw was the research was very focused on a specific goal.
Yeah.
Right? It was very, very applied. And, you couldn't just work on anything that you wanted to.
Yeah.
Right? Anything that caught your interest, they had a certain product that they were trying to market.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing that you had to focus on. And so I thought, would be better to have a little bit more, intellectual freedom to work on different things. And my experience at the National Laboratory was just fabulous in the sense that, there were teams of people working on a project, people doing surface chemistry like I do, but also material science, electron microscopy, and then theory people all working on one project.
Yeah.
And so, you really have the expertise to do something substantial.
Yeah.
But the National Laboratory is also tied to, what the research interests are of the current administration. And so, that could change fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Right? A project that you were, really invested in, and then, political climate changes, and you've got to move on to other things. And so, that's one of the reasons why academia was really appealing, the intellectual freedom that you have. But the other thing that I noticed when I worked at the National Lab was that there were no students around. In my whole life, I have been, my parents, they worked at the university, we're tied to the season of the semesters.
Yeah.
And I really missed that. And I really missed being able to work with students.
Yeah.
And, new people coming in and seeing things for the first time.
Yeah.
And they're all, super excited, and you want to, give them all this knowledge and experience. And there was, frankly, less of an opportunity to do that at the National Lab. And so that's why I ultimately decided that academia was the thing for me. And I have to say that, people who knew me when I was in graduate school probably wouldn't have predicted that. So that was part of my journey.
Yeah, I like the fact that you've mentioned intellectual freedom.
Yeah.
And the fact that you love teaching. I love teaching. I don't know why we have to ingest all this knowledge and yet we cannot dispense it. That's the part. The reason as to why I would love to get into academia is the ability to read but be able to dispense that knowledge to the next generation. Yes. And it just depends on the next person. How do you want to use that knowledge? Mm-hmm. So the research that we do, you study the theory but go to the lab and try to experiment on it. That's and improve on what's already there. Right. And personally, I have not finished. I'm in my second year. I'm pretty sure after my 4 or 5 years, I'll stay in academia because I love it. I enjoy it. And that intellectual freedom, you get to study things that you're passionate about. Right. Otherwise, the rest takes you to a lab and you become a lab technician. I don't think it's fun or it's enjoyable. I have very many questions, but that will happen later after I invite my audience to also ask a couple of questions,
I do personally have one.
Okay.
So I think it's really interesting here you talk about kind of like your experiences when you were in high school growing up with like research, your parents, and kind of I guess kind of like your love for like discovery and like science and things like that. I do notice that there's like a trend in academia where like everybody who goes into it kind of like starts off like being really hands-on, but eventually like once they like in their later years getting tenure, their day-to-day is kind of like they're not in the lab as much, but then they're like kind of managing people who are kind of doing the work. Was there like a point where you kind of like realized like that shift? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I do know what you're saying, and especially when you're a graduate student and you're a postdoc and you're the one in the laboratory doing all those things, and then when you're an assistant professor, right, and you're training your first group of graduate students, you've got to be in the lab doing those things. And then later on, your students become more senior, and the next group of new people come in, and you don't have to train them anymore because your senior students are doing it. And then, as you go on in your career, you have more and more responsibilities, right? Responsibilities to do service to the scientific community. Mm-hmm. They want you to chair committees, to organize symposia. And then you just, you just get pulled away. There's less of an opportunity to go into your lab and do things. I still like to do it, and I'll make the time to do it. Maybe, it's a matter of priority, right? Mm-hmm. For me to make the time to do that, I'm giving up on doing some other things. But, when I talk to my students, I don't talk to them in my office. We're going to go to the laboratory, right? And we point to things like, here, I'm putting this thing together. Well, what do you think? Mm-hmm. Here, I'm doing this experiment. This is the data. I personally need to see all that stuff myself to really understand what's going on. And I still do a few things in the laboratory. And I have some trips in which we go to Brookhaven National Laboratory to use the synchrotron, and that's the time that I'll actually be there doing the experiments. And it's really great because it's my only chance to do that. But you're absolutely right that as you get sort of later in your career, you just have less time to do that.
Yeah.
But I think that there are some people who kind of never lose that connection to the laboratory. I know more people more senior than myself that still go in the laboratory. They might not, actually do their own experiments, but they're aware of what's going on.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I have questions. I understand you're a very passionate person about the science. So apart from science, do you have any other interests? Like how do you balance the life in sort of, of course.
Yeah. It's a difficult balance, I think. So I have a 17-year-old son. Mm-hmm. And so, for the past 17 years, it's been a real, it's a challenge, right? Yeah. It's a challenge to balance raising a child with one's career. Mm-hmm. And basically, what I found is that, you really have to have a partner who is supportive of that, right? And that, I think, is the key component. And then I think that one has to prioritize some things, right? That you can't be doing everything 100% as you were before, because you just have priorities.
Yeah.
And how those priorities balance is different for everyone. Each person has to find that balance for themselves.
I have one more question. So, as a woman, how was it being in a STEM field as a student, as working in a national lab, and also in a university, like in academia?
Yeah.
How was it? Did you face any challenges, or how was it in?
Yeah. So, I think that over the course of my career, things have changed really substantially. So, when I was a graduate student at Harvard, my graduate advisor was the only woman in the department, and the first woman to have gotten tenure in that department. So she was really, like a leader in that regard. But things have changed a lot. You go back to the same department, and now there's a significant fraction of women. And I think that everybody's efforts in those years have really paid off, especially in my scientific community, in which we're kind of lucky because the older generation and the leaders of that community have really made a concerted effort to reach out to groups that were, not very well represented, whether it's female scientists or whether it's, minorities. And so I just feel like things have changed a lot. And as I become more senior, it's, now my responsibility. So, if, I meet a new woman in the field, I'll definitely go out to lunch, have dinner at a conference, and try to give them as much advice as I can. And just like the people before me did for me.
And I think thank you for raising this up, because this was coming to my next subject. Yeah. So a few days ago, on the 13th of this month, Nature published a paper stating that women were less cited in terms of citations, which is very important for us in research. Yeah. And the disparity that is there when it comes to research, recognition of the work that women do, and even just promoting our work through citation is still low. But of course, equity, inclusion, diversity is a growing subject. And the more the years come, the more we see a change.
That's right. And
as I was reading the paper, I just, it just depends on where you're looking at it. Like, personally, I looked at it, I was like, oh, so this is true. But by nature, there's a way women, we are a bit, biased from our male counterparts. There's things like naturally in life where the female gender is not valued as much. And when I was reading that paper, I was like, okay, it depends on how I'm going to look at it. And the way I decided to look at it was like, well, we have realized the gap, and the fact that people are publishing about it, that means we are working towards it. So how have you been able to navigate all these years of having your, publishing your work, people citing it, and how do you promote people to literally cite it? Because one phrase that I saw on the paper was that one of the professors was saying that male professors cite each other.
Really?
But we women do not cite each other.
Really? Okay. So I have to say, in my field, I've actually not noticed that at all, right? I can imagine that in some other fields it might be different. But surface science is, a newer field than, historical biology or maybe organic synthesis,
medicine,
right? Which, for years and years was dominated by men, right? And so then they get a certain kind of mentality, and it's harder for somebody who's a little bit different, right? A woman or minority to sort of, break into that. And I think that the thing that's important is for the older generation, or, even people of my generation, to be, very supportive and encouraging of that, to be welcoming, right? And to mentor people. I think the mentoring is really key.
Mentorship, mentorship is key. And you as a woman, I don't say that you shouldn't mentor male students, but as we are growing in the STEM field, we need to recognize the diversity, the inclusion factor, so that all people are included in that. So I think that paper, and I think it was also published in the National Academy Association, and there was this long debate on different people giving their views. But conclusively is the fact that we've reached an age where we are trying to empower women to also grow. Of course, the number is significantly low, but we are in that age where empowerment is key. So mentorship goes into it to empower.
That's extremely important. I think.
So I respect the fact that you are in this field that is extremely engaging, very competitive. You are a woman with family, and I can imagine that is challenging. I am a mom. I have 2 children. And the other day I was trying to write, I like to write. I wanted to publish it on LinkedIn on how to navigate PhD and motherhood. And I was writing it and I was like, people don't need to know just my story. So I'm collecting stories of my fellow PhD students to hear how it feels like to be in. So how has it been for you? You say that you have a supportive partner. But
who's also a chemist.
Who is also a chemist working. What have you had to sacrifice over the years?
Oh gosh, probably our social life. That's what I'm thinking. We probably would have socialized so much more. So my son actually played Little League Baseball. And it was so much fun because we have like a whole community. It was like a second family. But that took a lot of time. We go watch baseball games every evening.
That's an investment.
But like I said, you have to prioritize, right?
Exactly.
You have to decide the things that are important to you. And one of the things that we decided was important was watch it. He wants to play baseball, then I'm going to go watch him play.
Exactly.
And you just have to make time, right? Find a way to prioritize. Try to be as efficient as you can. But it's really tough. And it does really make you, look at your life and decide, right, what it is that your priorities are going to be. Because there's only so much time to go around.
He's 17 now, I can imagine. 17 years of parenting.
That's right.
So you had to lose some, gain some social life for something that you had to sacrifice. But do you think it was worth it?
Of course it was.
Thank you.
Of course it was. There's nothing more rewarding.
I'm so happy to hear that. And I will again invite my colleagues as we are almost complete.
I think it's you're talking about like the kind of cited papers and how like I guess men cite each other's papers a little bit more. I don't know. There's this like concept, and I don't know if it's because I'm not sure if I'm projecting, but it's like I'll give it like an analogy because I wasn't sure how to like put it, but like say if like let's take birds, right? There's blue and red birds. Say like there's like a bunch of blue birds, that's the standard, right? And there's like one red bird, right? All of a sudden another red bird comes. Like you would think that the red bird, after kind of like this feeling of isolation, would look at this red bird and think community. But some people see, competition. Is that...
See, that's not good, because what I was going to say is, when I was a graduate student at Harvard, and that was a time that there were not a lot of women in the field, right? And only 10% of of everybody in the building was a woman. And we basically banded together, because we had that commonality and we all wanted to share our experiences. And I think that was ultimately good in promoting camaraderie, promoting success. And then, we all went on to our own careers and continued to mentor all of the women who were younger than we were. And I think that's how it has to be. That, in your analogy, if the first red bird doesn't see a connection with the second one, then we're in trouble. Because then those poor red birds are going to be isolated forever.
Yeah.
It's like, definitely like, it's really interesting because like, it's all like, I think it's all like sometimes like conditioning, not to get too much into like politics, but like, there's another study saying that women have like less patents, right? But then there was another study saying women are less likely to even file the patent, like even go for the patent and things like that. And then there was like, and me just connecting different studies, there was another study, like a sociology one, where like there was this society in like, I think somewhere in like Asia or something like that, where pretty much women predominantly, like there was this game where like kind of like, it was more like a matriarch. So like, there was this game where you had to take a risk, right? You had to take a risk. And women were more likely to take the risk than the men because it was a matriarchal society. So they're kind of like all connecting that towards each other, where like, I guess the standard is more likely to take risks because typically they don't think about they don't have anything to lose. You know what I'm saying? Like, like if you are, if there's this, for some people, like we even call it like imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome is different for like everybody, but I do feel like for like if you're a minority, it's a little bit different. So it's always this thing like, I should be happy to even be here sometimes, right? Versus like, some of the people who are just kind of like, I'm here, like,
Yeah, I really do feel that, when you've sort of established a critical number, then the situation becomes totally different, right? So, when I first started at University of South Carolina, I was only the second woman faculty member in the department to get tenure. And since then, the first one was actually Kathy Murphy, has moved on to the University of Illinois. So now I'm the most senior woman in the department, but there are many who have come after me. There's maybe 7 others of us. And so, now we form kind of a critical nucleus, and we don't feel like we're outsiders. Or somehow different than everybody, and our male colleagues don't give us that feeling either. We're just all one and the same. So I think that once you've got that critical number, then everything changes with the dynamics.
And for me, I look at it, it's not about the competition, it's about you doing what you love and contributing to research, to what you have to do in the long run. And I think it's a big debate out there because this was a paper on physics. So I can imagine there's one going to come out on chemistry, another one on medicine. So it is everywhere. But as something that I get to learn as a woman is, like he said, you need to be able to take the risk. And I want to be an inspiration to somebody. You are an inspiration to so many people. You are a mentor, and you've mentored so many after you. And that's what you want to leave. That's the legacy that you want to leave at the end of this journey. And the journey started 23, 24, or many, many years ago. For us, the journey just started a few years back. But it's that legacy that you want to leave behind that really matters, whether you're a man or you're a woman. No need to publish a lot of papers yet. They really don't contribute to making the society better. It has been such a pleasure. I am inspired. I get inspired every day by speaking to very intelligent people like you, very qualified in your field.
Thank you.
And I hope that, after this, we get to make more communications. You now have a strong network with our students, and we can continue the conversation.
That's right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to get to talk to you.
It is. We would have done longer, but, we need to stop somewhere.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Donna, and it has been a pleasure. I want to take this opportunity to thank everybody who has been part of the Navigating Nano episode today. Kindly listen to our episode and subscribe to our channel on YouTube and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Thank you very much.